Welcome, another recap episode. Going to track the last 20 episodes. First, thanks to our sponsors, Beckett Media, Beckett Grading, Beckett Authentication, ComC.com, Burbank Sports Cards, Mike Stadium Sports Cards, Heritage Auctions, Huggins & Scott Auctions, Topps, Panini, and Upper Deck. I'm going to start with episode 119 for this recap and go all the way up through 138. So it should be 20 episodes, but there's a few more since I had a number of planned and unplanned microcasts that popped in. But the tone of these 20 episodes, I think was pretty, I won't say nostalgic as much as it was just in many cases some personal reminiscences about situations for me personally as well as for our company. So beginning with the New Year's memories of how I spent my New Year's back in the old days, not to be emulated. Do as I say, not as I did. And then I brought out these, continued with the investment fallacies, the short ones, the flip or hold. Again, it's pretty obvious. If you buy something for half price, you could immediately double your money if it really is half price, or you could hold on to it with that low basis and hope that it goes up some more. So again, it's your call. But the key is buy something for less than it's worth, and then you're sitting pretty well. The next one was on free labor, which is obviously two ways to look at it. You obviously have something else you could be doing with your time. If you're playing with cards, even if it's something you would have to pay somebody else to do, you might enjoy looking through cards. I enjoy looking through cards I haven't seen for a while, and again, so that may be incorrect for an economist, but for me, I enjoy working with cards on my own terms. And then 119C was just the long tail. That's just way more important than some people think, and it makes the hobby more interesting and more complicated. But again, I don't want to make this totally about Kobe, but what a shocking situation. But within 6 hours, within 1 hour of Kobe's death, I started getting hit in my ComC account, and many of those were in the long tail. So they weren't just going after his very, very best cards, because I don't have that many of his very best cards that are up on that site, but I have a whole bunch of $2 cards, and yes, they're $2 and $2.50 cards of Kobe. And I'm not saying it got cleaned out, but there was quite a bit. Again, that's healthy. That's what we're talking about, the long tail, not just the glamour cards. 120, I don't recap recaps. 121 was a what if on the heart attack. Again, bittersweet. My life is great now, but that, even anybody that had a heart attack will tell you it'll change your life. It's a spiritual experience. It can be very taxing on the people in your life, because you were this guy that was seen to be bulletproof, and we all know that no one's bulletproof, and I certainly know that I'm not. 122 was my card sorting 2.0 with Rob Barris. It was a lot of fun. I'll do this episode again, maybe do it with somebody else, and maybe with Rob, just breaking down these large collections that you could sometimes run into, whether it's from a relative or at a show or an auction lot. If it's anything that requires sorting, Rob has some interesting theories and put into practice, and I do too. The 122 A and B, Bill Mazeroski, Joe Morgan. Mazeroski's more my contemporary. And again, I was a Pirate fan. Joe Morgan was on the dreaded Reds after we was on the Astros. But again, a great, great player. And as I mentioned, I kind of patterned a little bit of my golf swing after Joe Morgan. Obviously trying to keep the ball in play and keep my elbow in. 123 was the what if about auction sponsors. Rich and I had fun going through and just acknowledging the uniqueness of Huggins & Scott as well as Heritage, and how they'd be missed if they weren't there. They're both somewhat unique. I'm sure others would pick up the slack, but hobby's a better place that since we have those auction sponsors. So that's not a fun what if to think if they weren't there. 124 was the interview with James Good. Enjoyed visiting with James over the phone. Again, I've been around him in person enough times that he's just a nice guy, and really sharp on the social media and aware of what's going on with ComC. Had a good time hearing about his what he's doing at ComC and what ComC's doing in 2020. 125 was Chris Carlin of Upper Deck, his origin story. The moral of that story: show up well dressed, work hard, and be sharp. So the hard work and being sharp, along with that served him well for 20 plus years at Upper Deck. So hope you got 20 more in you, Chris. Enjoyed getting to know you. I had met you before, but nice to have a good phone conversation and record it. 126 was investment fallacies. The counterexample really looking at Jeff Wilson's, he's the Sports Card Investor podcast guy who's really doing some excellent work. He's not super controversial, except if you think that really concentrating on investing in sports cards is controversial. A lot of people do it, whether they do it full-time or part-time. There is money to be made, but there's also money to be lost. I did kind of not a rebuttal because I generally agreed, but I was mostly confirming, but I was doing more, kind of looking at his 20 things that new collectors ought to know. And that actually just began the conversation because I've got him on as a guest coming up. So you'll enjoy, the in-person back and forth of that, mostly affirming, not counterexample. 127 was the descriptive audio. I don't hate those, but, again, the audio's bad, but, it was fun going through this box that I just opened up, and it all had all these wrestling sets that I won from Huggins and Scott. I didn't pay a lot of money for it. And Eric, I'm wondering if Eric is thinking that if I paid anything for it, but there actually were a few good things buried down deep, a couple of inserts. A lot of the base sets were saturated on COMC, and the complete sets are readily available, but there were a few inserts that I can post and get my money back. And then I've got these base sets that cover, as Eric said, the last 5 or 6 years of WWE are pretty heavily covered. Well, 127 A and B, those were the episodes I did with Dave Slipka when he was over here, and we talked about just shows and a little bit of a then and now aspect of, again, there's starting to be more shows, and the intriguing possibility is that there are a lot of entrepreneurial types who run shows, and there may be some opportunities with the hobby being this strong for 2020, 2021, 2022, that there may be a comeback of regional shows or some kind of a competitor to the national convention that might be in the spring or the fall or the winter, whereas the national being at Atlantic City in 2020 is going to be the key event for the summer. 128 was looking at Honus Wagner as a player, not just a card, not just the card. That was fun for me to do. Again, a pirate. Obviously before my time, but a pirate. 129 was the then and now about the distributors with Daryl McKay, who was one of the top distributors 20 and 30 years ago. I enjoyed catching up with him. Again, that was over the phone, but I've been around him over the years and saw him at the National, and it was fun to catch up. 130 was the episode with Dane Conan. It's amazing. And Dane's a sharp young guy doing dynasty breaks. And what I realized now after doing 100 plus of these episodes, how many of the guests worked in a card shop when there were 20,000 card shops out there. I guess there were 20,000 or 40,000 young teens and preteens who worked in those card shops and now have grown up and have come back to their love of the industry with the understanding that comes from working in that card shop. So Dane and I talked about his, I don't know if it's his favorite set, but he really wanted to talk about the birth of refractors, and that was fun to do that with Dane. 131, we're going my then and now on Wild Card with Rich. Again, it's hard to explain. Wild Card, it was wild, and they had a short life, but even now the cards they're some of the toughest cards, the Thousand Stripers. 132, the tribute to Alan Rosen, Mr. Mint, did that with Dave Slipka, who knew him in a little bit different way. That actually that drew pretty well as an episode. There's still interest in Mr. Mint. He was a little bit older than me, but kind of my contemporary, and I was in the industry when he burst on the scene and made a big splash. And Dave and I enjoyed just going down that and acknowledging his just the amazing personality that he brought to it. 132 A and B were, again, more personal than MLK Day, a little bit of a social commentary. I promised to keep that minimal. This is Sports Card Insights. I try to get Sports Card Insights in every episode. And the January 20th, the big game in the Astrodome that I watched with my future best friends on a tiny TV, back 52 years ago. That really was interesting. Again, for men, I think women maybe are like this, but I may speak for men, is that men a lot of times draw around common interest, and that can be card collecting or just sports in general. 133 was I changed my mind. I actually did do an episode on MLK Day, even though it's a bank holiday. And I thought, what better day, no better day than to do Jackie Robinson, his cards, his, again, larger than life figure, and died really pretty young. and is a hero to many, not just African Americans, but great American hero. 134 was the episode on Walt Alston and Sparky Anderson, perhaps the worst players in the Hall of Fame. Fortunately for them, they were two of the very best managers. I did that episode with Rich Klein, and Rich Klein always brings some special insight to every episode I do with him, and that was fun to do those two managers together. 135 was the what if on no card shop sponsors, which again, the Burbank sports cards with Rob Veras and Mike Stadium sports cards with Mike Fruitman. Those are very different card shops. And again, Rich and I discussed if they weren't around, if those guys didn't exist, perhaps somebody would pick up the slack. But those guys are doing an excellent job, and they're what I would like. I believe they're exemplary. And they allow people to see what they're doing, but they're hard to copy. You got to start with the personality and organization for both of those to be able to have a plan and stick to it. 136 was my looking at 1990 score football. Surprising number of people listened to that. Again, that was a huge letdown from 1989. So many times the card companies follow up a really interesting inaugural set with a set that's considered overproduced. There's a lot of content in the 1990 score football set. So again, even though I would consider it junk wax because there's really nothing you're going to get great out of a box, it would be fun. It's laden with superstars and not parallels, but these special cards. There's many cards of several of the superstars. 137 and 138, the main episodes, were before and after the sale of Beckett Publications, and I really, like I said, some of this podcast is just personal, autobiographical. I mean, I was there. There were a few others that were there, but not all listeners will be interested in that, but some are. And again, I don't require that anybody needs to listen to any specific episode. It's more episodic than serial. If you start with episode 1 and you get up to 138, I'm not having a test that you've listened to all episodes, but for those of you who have companies, it just is my experience of selling the company, and it's hard to sell a company that has your name on it. So, and to watch it in many cases, live on. And then 137A was my preamble for the dinners that I've done for the last 5 years here, where mostly guys in town, but a few people fly in, and so we put a microphone at the beginning, at the middle of the table, and I'll improve that with Eric Norton's help next year, because I will do it again. It's been very successful and a lot of fun for me as well as the people there. So we have try to have one conversation with taking turns, and then with the recording of that, I've tried to chop it into episodes that have some cohesion, so you can, again, listen if you want to listen. And so I did a couple, they weren't teasers, but some of the smaller topics that they weren't divergences, but we had a little 5 or 6 minute riff on kind of the dilemma that I fully understand from Brian Fleischer, the senior price guide guy at Beckett Media, just the anomalies, how pricing doesn't always make sense, but it's when you're trying to have empirical price guides based on observed data, the data don't always make sense. So my hat's off to Brian, and it was good to give him a chance to just talk about that and interact with the other people at the table, many of whom knew what Brian was talking about because they were in similar situations back years ago. And then 137C was the soccer card discussion, pretty much led off by Joe Davis. He wanted to talk about the Big Five card company, the Big Five sports, kind of like the 4 majors in golf. Is there a 5th major? No, there's just 4. And right now there's only 4 major sports. But we still think that eventually soccer is going to be increasing. Okay, and then again, I talked about before and after the sale of Beckett Publications. The last episode that I'll just talk about here is just the tribute to Kobe. Again, I just did that kind of spur of the moment. I didn't think a lot about it, tried to just not be too emotional. But what an iconic player that I loved watching. I mentioned my oldest daughter was very much into basketball, and we did a bunch of father-daughter road trips for her AAU games when she was 12, 13, 14, I guess. And so again, good memories of that. And again, I just wanted to affirm Kobe's desire to be a really good dad and really work at his craft and set a standard for excellence in basketball. So that's it. I'll be back again tomorrow with another regular episode. And I'll be recapping every 20 with some of these. It's getting harder to do the recaps when I have some of these shorter episodes. But again, they're intended for you to be able to just check them out. If you like them, that's great. If you don't, well, let me know, because I'll do less of what you don't like and more of what you do like. So just contact me at Dr. James Beckett at allspelledout@gmail.com. And I continue to get some good suggestions, some of which will lead to episodes with the person making the suggestion, and others will be things that I do with somebody here or on my own. So again, thanks for listening. It's a great hobby. And hope you're enjoying as much as I am. Thanks.